was the, I know obviously you were one of the people who pushed this and helped the NFL come to this decision with a kickoff rule change. What are you expecting, and why is this a good thing?
I'm expecting a lot of unknown, really. I mean, we're going through the video of the XFL and even our own ideas and saying, well, do we think this will work? And the answers are nobody knows. But when I first saw this concept in 2021 in the XFL, I was very intrigued, just for the reason of it's a kind of a cool concept. It's the same play, it just starts a little bit different. And then last season, there's a lot more tape to evaluate from that league. And so we just kind of dove into all that and kind of made some tweaks to make it our own. Some ways we thought we could maybe make it a little bit better, which is to be determined. But I think it's a really cool play, and I hope everybody likes what it looks like once the ball is caught, even though it's a little bit unique at the start. So a huge bulk of my offseason has been the kickoff return, which has not been the case the last couple of seasons. It's almost like those were phases where it's like, 10% of our time is on that, and the rest is on field goal, block, punt return. So the percentages have swung pretty equal with the other phases.
And is it going to lead to changes in how you allocate practice time and everything? Have y'all had to reformulate what you've done previously?
Yeah, we've talked about that, but with what I just said is now probably not the case, where last season we did spend the normal amount of time game planning and preparing for kick return, just in case it actually ever happened. So I don't think our allocation of time, once the season starts, is going to be different. Training camp, there's going to be a little bit more allocated towards kickoff and kickoff return. But then to answer, one part of your questions at the start, which is a huge part of it, was the reason we went to this is because the NFL asked some of us as special teams coaches, how can we, on this play, drive the return percentage up, but also make the play safer? And that's kind of two opposite things that are happening. So with this concept, we feel like the return percentage will go up. Last year it was like 22%, so hopefully we get it over about 50. And then I really feel like without the running and the high-speed collisions, it's going to make it a safer play. So I think it's going to be a good deal.
Do you think teams might still just blast it out of the end zone?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know if that 5 yards makes that big of a difference.
Yeah, I think it makes the difference between a 22% return percent and 50 to 60 return percent, hopefully. But I think if some teams have a couple big returns early to mid, those teams might get more touchbacks. It's like, well, we want to give these guys a chance. If the average drive starts to 30 and the touchback's to 30, well, let's hit a touchback. So I can see that happening. But I think right now everybody feels like as a kickoff team, you don't want to just give the team the ball at 30, because for us it's 2 first downs and we're in field goal range. So that's part of the deal. So I think it's all unknown, which is kind of the cool part for me and hopefully for everybody else. Is let's just see what happens with everything.
How do you envision teaching and implementation? Does it start with OTAs or does it not start till camp?
We're starting OTA number 1 with kickoff and kickoff return, which last year we started with punt and punt return for the first couple of days. But now OTA 1, we're coming out of the gates with kick return.
And do you envision, well, first of all, is it a little bit more like a football play, just the way it's set up, and can that impact what the personnel might be at the goal line to return it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people speculating it's going to be more like an offense or defensive outside zone running play. I still feel like it's a kickoff return play, where once the ball is caught, if you're watching the NFL kickoffs from the past couple of seasons, if you just pause the tape right when the ball gets caught, the kickoff is right about where we have him with this new idea, and the kickoff return is about right where it is with this new idea. It's just the start that looks different. But once the ball's caught, it's a pretty similar play in my opinion. And I know there's been some disagreements with that feeling that I have, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of new blocking techniques or cover techniques. It's just getting right to it a lot faster and taking all the running out. So there will be some differences, where when we're running, there's a lot more possibly weaving and avoiding and penetrating. You might not get that as much, so maybe that's why the big bodies come a little bit more into play, because you don't have the speed and the penetrators that can win, that way. So
by big bodies, you're talking about the blockers, not necessarily the returners. Like the makeup of a returner might still be a similar small, shifty, fast guy, whatever.
I'm talking about the blockers and the tacklers. You can see the bigger bodies maybe being a little bit more I don't know if valuable is the right way, but Nealand or Fahoko or Chauncey Golston, maybe you see, Schoonmaker, maybe you see those guys on kickoff and kickoff return where they maybe didn't find their way on it because there was a speed element that maybe was lacking, but now with the power element maybe coming into play, maybe they find themselves on it.
Before this rule, there were rare occasions, if any, where a kicker would have to prioritize touch over power.
Yeah.
With Brandon's soccer background, how much does that kind of help in being able to fit it in that landing zone if that's what you
Yeah, no, it's a huge, and that might be the biggest difference between last year's kickoff play and this year's kickoff play is for the kicker. So for the kicker last year, you can see, power and distance being the driving force. But right now, power and distance doesn't mean anything. So it's swung now to accuracy, and there's a distance control because you got to get it between the goal line and 20. But you really got to be really accurate with your left and right directionals, I think. Plus the unique ball, I think there's a place for knuckleballs or squirrely balls that we're going to have to catch, and other teams are probably going to have to do the same. So the kickoff specialists, in my opinion, their skills have totally flipped, 180.
Does Brandon's soccer background give him more of an advantage than other kickers, or is it?
I would like to think so. Yeah.
Last year when there were injuries, you talked about, how those injuries have a domino effect on special teams,
Yep.
personnel, and allocation of resources there.
Yeah.
How do you see all of this kind of factoring into what kind of players you can get onto the 53 and then the 48 for special
Yeah.
teams?
No, it's a great call. Last year we had quite a few that affected a lot of things we did on teams, and the new guys stepped up. But the other thing that people have disagreed with me on this, which is totally fine, because again, we don't really know, is I don't see the 48 really changing, because you're still going to dress, the same third or fourth back, the same third or fourth tight end, the same backup linebackers, because of their value as backup offensive or defensive players. And so I think I'm still going to get the same bodies, but maybe it expands, maybe like Austin Richards, as a backup offensive lineman, maybe he finds a spot on kickoff return where last year it just wasn't happening. And like I mentioned, Fahoko and some of the bigger bodies, they just didn't find themselves on those phases last year. They find themselves on these phases this year, but they've already been dressed, you know what I'm saying? So the 48 is probably still going to be the same, but I might have more bodies available to me on those phases than I did in the past. Great question, and I've asked him multiple times, and he says he's 100%. I don't know if he's lying or not, because anytime I ask him, he's always 100%. But he's had great rehab, and he's been here every day, and you guys know how he is the truest of true pros, and I feel like he's back, and he doesn't ever say a word about it. So.
How much was he missed within your unit last year? Because you had to do a lot of the shuffling
Yep.
because he was gone. What does he bring especially to this team?
I mean, somebody's good when they're playing, but you really know how good somebody is when they're not. And we really felt his absence last year, not only Monday through Saturday in the meeting room, but on Sunday. I felt like we weren't as good on punt return because of him. Obviously, he's not returning, but he's such a critical guy taking care of the gunners on the opponent that I felt like we didn't maybe get the return started or as successful as maybe we could have because he's so good at it. So there's so many little things that come into play when you're missing a guy like that. But then you have Sam Williams get opportunities, and Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks get opportunities. So in one way you miss them, but in another way we got to see a lot more work from young guys that, can they do it or not? And we felt like they could, and so it opens up, some more opportunities for some guys. But it's good to have him back for sure.
What
Can
does
you look at the
Brandon do
draft
for an
one,
encore?
please?
Yep.
What does Brandon do for an encore?
It's a good question. It's hard to beat. He missed one kick last year, one got blocked. But I think the kickoff part of his game comes into play a lot more. And we'll see if he can make every kick.
I know
that's,
last year you were
yeah.
mindful of all the work that he had
Yeah.
coming in and stuff, and obviously he had the surgery, so he had a little bit of a break. Are you still mindful of how much he works, with, leg strength and things like that, or is he in a normal off season that you've had with kickers in the past?
Yeah, I honestly am not concerned about it anymore because he had a great rest after the season. We basically mandated he does nothing for about 6 weeks, other than just typical, whatever he does. But no kicking, no lifting, no running, And so, we started probably a month ago with some actual kicking, and he felt great. And I think we just keep him on a normal kicking track now because it's a normal off-season for him and a normal season. So he's so well built for a long season as far as just the physical skills that I don't think he's going to be a guy that we have to worry about anymore with the volume control because we do it anyways.